Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Good to be with you this evening, and good to be with Anang Mittal, joining us to provide a little bit of expertise, a little bit of perspective on the escalating conflict between India and Pakistan. I've seen a lot of intelligence sourcing and commentary over the last couple of days that have suggested that we are now in the gradual escalatory phase of this conflict. Is that true just right off the bat, or maybe are you seeing some more positive signs?
No, I think that's completely true. As of right now, it's nighttime in India and Pakistan, and Pakistan's currently flying drones over India. India is responding with its air defense system, and so it's very obvious that after a couple of days of this, that whether they're testing out the air defense, whether India is doing that on the other side as well, because India has also sent drones over, and then they're waiting for a much larger kind of a strike once the air defense has been figured out and sort of depleted of some of their stocks.
You say waiting for maybe a larger strike. This would be Pakistan waiting for a larger strike, or the Indian military?
I think both sides, but I think right now the ball is in Pakistan's pocket in the sense of they will have to escalate this now because India is waiting back and sort of letting its air defense handle some of these issues, some of these drones that are coming through, missiles, whatever.
I hope you don't think this comment frivolous or perhaps unempathetic, but you ever play games at all? You a gamer kind of a guy?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Red Alert 2 back in the day in my teens.
Oh, my man.
Yeah.
My man.
RTS. Yeah.
The unexpected time of the day. So I couldn't help but notice, and this is true in a lot of real-time strategy games, and I might get roasted by the foreign policy bros for this. I just don't care. Every civilization appears to have kind of an ultimate ability, something that they are very, very good at. I was both surprised at how much I wasn't surprised to see the style of cyber attack that India launched against Pakistan, that a bunch of malicious links that I guess infected specifically through WhatsApp were being flooded into zones and sites where there were a lot of Pakistani IP addresses connected. Is there more to India's maybe cyber security or cyber offensive strategy than is perhaps currently known on the international stage? I've never seen anything like this.
I mean, I wouldn't say anything that's sort of out of the ordinary. I think it's more that India is now engaging in that fourth and fifth generation warfare. Even yesterday, a lot of official Indian news channels were embarrassed because they shared all kinds of stories about Pakistani jets being downed, a pilot being captured, and then they had to retract and walk back those stories. And the feeling in the news media in India is that they were pretty much fooled by this information warfare, whether emanating from official government sources or sort of the cybersecurity kind of people sending messages back and forth. So even the Indians themselves who are on the ground, who are sort of pro-government, are like, what's going on? We're being, taken for a ride.
Mm-hmm. Well, you don't think that Pakistan's government can say anything better? On May 8th, yesterday, the official government of Pakistan account posted footage from Arma 3 as though it were realistic military footage. And wow.
Yeah, so I will tell you, in that part of the world, people are generally much more gullible about these things, and also because they don't have the same safeguards or sort of beliefs in the real versus unreal. So a Pakistani or even an Indian will say, well, so what if it was video game footage? It shows up, for them, it's just like, it doesn't matter. It's the perception is the reality. And that's, I think, very hard for Americans to understand. It's very much a perception and propaganda game in Asia on both sides.
So the propaganda side starts to leave the snarky social media aspect and enter the grittier, nastier, long-term horrors of war beyond just the border skirmishes. And I ask, maybe you could give a little bit of our audience some perspective on the Kashmir region, the Punjab. What's going on in this territory that both India and Pakistan claim, but there's also a line of control? What is this all about?
Well, it really started in 1947 when the British left and partitioned India into...
As every great story starts.
Yeah, into two countries, Pakistan for the supposed Muslims, and Pakistan at that time also included Bangladesh. At that time it was called East Pakistan. And so in India itself, not in Pakistan, a bunch of kingdoms that had relationships with the British for hundreds of years were told, well, it's up to you if you want to become part of India officially, or you can accede to Pakistan if you wish. So they gave them that choice, which is a very dangerous choice because certainly the Indian people and the government that was going to be in charge did not want that. And so it was kind of the British sort of giving a bit of a middle finger to India and Pakistan on the way out. You guys sort this out, kind of a thing. And that led to the Maharaja of Kashmir, who was Hindu, saying, well, I want to be part of India, but he sort of played it coy. And then Pakistani troops started filtering in, and then he very quickly acceded to the Union of India, as they call it. And that sort of gave Pakistan the impetus to start a war. So immediately, a few days after both countries became independent, they were at war. The problem is the Prime Minister of India at the time believed in the peace and harmony, kumbaya thing of the UN, that the UN will mediate all disputes. It had just been created 2 years ago. And so he decided to take this dispute to the UN rather than seeking a military situation. And the UN said, well, wherever the Pakistanis are, that's where they're going to stop. And wherever the Indians are, that's where they're going to stop.
UN.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And so that's why we have this issue, which is called, it's like the DMZ in North Korea and South Korea. It's a line of control. It's not an official border. It's just something that both sides have accepted that this is where they'll stop. And if they cross it, that's an official act of war. And that's a situation that's been for the last 70 years. And that does not stop the Pakistani terrorists from trying to cross that border to create terrorism and kill people on the Indian side, what the Pakistanis called Indian administered Kashmir. And then, of course, the Indians called the Pakistani side Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So again, kind of like the Israel-Gaza thing as well, North Korea, South Korea as well.
So let's dive into something that I don't think many have discussed yet. And this is the lukewarm approach that's coming from I don't want to say the European Union as a whole, because there was really only one statement by kind of a defensive representative that was very milquetoast. But I know that you've had German representatives, French representatives, then, of course, the United Nations itself, the strong statement of the Secretary General saying both sides need to, kind of like Ross and Friends, just bring it down a little bit here. I got to ask, what does it look like watching the entire world claim that with the unstable nuclear power of Pakistan and the slightly more stable, but still the northern regions of India are in fact very chaotic, with that situation reaching a boiling point? What does it feel like to see the rest of the world just say, settle down, that's all we're going to say?
Yeah, I think for the Indians, it's actually a positive move. So Pakistan has long been a Western-friendly country because of the Cold War. They were a bulwark against the Soviet Union when America was trying to fight them in Afghanistan, when the Soviets were in Afghanistan. And so Pakistan had this sort of friendly nature to America, to the UK, to the European nations, where anytime an Indian prime minister would visit those countries, or anytime the Indian issue came up, it was really, they would say, the India-Pakistan issue, or they would bring up Kashmir. So Pakistan for the last 40 years was really good at internationalizing what was a border dispute. And now what you're seeing is the other way around. India is now an economy that is 11 times the size of Pakistan, is on track to becoming the fourth largest economy in the world. And so India's soft power, with the fact that most countries know Indians, they work with them, they have generally positive feelings about them, apart from the immigration stuff that people generally sort of every country's going through. So I think India's soft power and hard power in terms of buying military equipment from the Europeans and from the Americans, and showing that it's a much better partner on all kinds of things, on financial issues, on trade issues, on fighting terrorism issues, and on combating China issues.
You've read exactly where I'm going. This is the key. I know that we're looking at the perhaps the beginning of the end of this brief U.S.-China trade war. I know there are talks that are happening this weekend. The Chinese economy is in free fall. Beijing has, even for a communist regime, to stop posting any kind of statistics about employment is wild. That's unreal to see. What I think this is, and feel free to tell me I'm 8 ways wrong from Sunday here. There's an opportunity for the United States to shore up an ally with India so that the United States can create a hyper trade give and take with the Indian people to shore up a stronger alliance militarily, perhaps culturally, and kind of bring forth a stronger power in Asia, other than worrying about Chinese boats. Do you see a lot of desire for this on the other side of the world, or what?
Absolutely, yeah. I think so. The thing is, with it, we're already in a much better defense, trade, all kinds of relationships. The free trade agreement will probably be ironed out by the end of the year.
Right.
President Trump has already talked about it. So
Vance,
I
of
think
course, has flown over to India to talk about this kind of things. An unusual trip for the vice president to make.
absolutely. So there's a lot of positivity there, good feelings on both sides. I think on the China issue, India has just negotiated a border sort of agreement that was going on for the last 5 years.
So you're going to say, yeah, I totally trust China to honor that.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where what you noticed was when the tensions flared up more than a month ago, China essentially said, well, Pakistan should stop terrorism, and both sides. And so China kind of took themselves out of this thing. Some of the Chinese social media has been crazy, but the official government accounts have said nothing. They're maintaining a silence, and I think that's exactly what's going on, where everybody's waiting to see where India comes out in this, because for the Western nations, it will show that India is going to be a valuable partner in being a bulwark against China. And I think they're also waiting and hoping that Pakistan will not do anything stupid, escalatory, and will essentially sort of, or they'll most likely play the Gaza playbook. They've already been playing it. When India bombed terrorist bases, they immediately, tried to say, "Oh, well, women and children were killed," and that kind of a thing. So I think this situation
Gaza
is very
Ministry
fluid.
of Health stuff, right?
Exactly.
Right after that,
Exactly.
This is you made a really great point, and I think there's a broader international perspective here that I'm looking for in the 2020s and then the 2030s, for a nation to be a part of the global hegemon. For a nation to actually represent its region, it has to take care of things on its immediate border first. You see the United States doing this right now with the Sinaloa cartel, with Tren de Aragua, which has established itself from Venezuela up through Central America into Mexico and the U.S., and then, of course, MS-13. The United States dealing with that directly is a key part of being able to then look outward. India has to make sure that its border with Pakistan is a more defined border, that it gets this stuff to a position where there are no longer Indian families who are being slaughtered in these brutal Islamic terror attacks. And that kind of, we're no longer messing around. All right, we're not doing this anymore. I think that kind of an attitude from the Indian government scares China. I do.
I think it does.
That kind of free fall they're in right now is not just economic, it's cultural. Right? The Xi Jinping kind of neo-Maoism has slipped. And I don't think that they're going to be able to regain that kind of footing. And so there is really an opportunity here for India to establish itself as kind of the independent leader of the region.
Oh, absolutely. I think, look, China is in a little bit of a better military position and economic position currently. But as you said, they're in free fall. We don't know what the future holds. India is a much more democratic country. I know some people don't like the prime minister's religion or whatever sort of issues the international media always brings up. But I think it's very obvious that most of the Western countries, whether they poo-poo random religious violence or sectarianism in that country, again, Asia is not the West. They generally realize and recognize that Indian citizens, Indian diaspora, the government itself is generally willing to work on a much more friendlier basis and much more aligned is the word with the West than it used to be, and is gonna be helpful in many ways, not just in trade. Like I said, Foxconn is now bringing over factory manufacturing of iPhones to India. And China does not want that. So I think part of this conflict is also going to remains to be seen whether China will take the escalation as well. We may have to stop shipping stuff to India, and Foxconn has to be nationalized, and some of those sort of moves are also going to have to be watched.
If China blocks Taiwan in kind of a blockade for trade routes, there's a good argument to be made that China might also try to interfere with U.S.-India shipping.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Anang Mittal, thank you so much for joining us briefly to talk about this. I'd love to get into whether or not you think Operation Sindoor is concluded and what that looks like over the next couple of months. But we'll save that for next time if you join us again. What do you say?
Thank you so much. I would love to. It's currently ongoing. It's everybody's guess as to where it will end and how it will end.
Thanks for tuning in to this special weekend interview and update here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. We'll see you Monday. Take care.